we're here with Allison Haley Paul, a contemporary artist at Lagoka who uses lavish, rich textures and a lot of geographical scenes. So we're really glad you could make it.
Thank you.
So first question, when did you start getting into art and design?
Oh God, ages. I mean, since school. So I remember doing, just crazy different media projects and what have you, but it was mostly in high school that I started in ceramics. And then from there I went to Pratt Institute on a ceramics scholarship. And I worked with Byron Temple, who's a genius. He's now gone, but he studied Bernard Leach, and so there's a lot of Japanese input and a lot of work with glazes and pigments, and so it's very exciting. But Pratt's a great school, and that's an amazing design background. And my father's an architect and built houses and done a lot of really interesting things.
Yeah, wow. So you've definitely used your design and ceramic skills into the painting?
Yes, and then I'm also an interior designer.
Okay.
So I went to Pratt Institute, and then I went to Design Institute in San Diego. So I was an interior designer for years, and that's how I actually started in painting. Was I had a client in La Jolla who needed a very large focus piece, and we couldn't find anything they liked. And I was house sitting for them, and I said, "I'll do one while you're gone." So I did, and they still have it. So in a beautiful house in La Jolla. So it was very fun. So that's how I actually started, and then I just enjoyed it so much, just that one opportunity, and that was 15 years ago that I've been working and studying and researching and doing thousands of paintings to get to this point.
Wow.
Very fun. Definitely fun.
So describe your painting process for a typical painting like the one behind you.
My painting process for something like this is I do a lot of photo studies. Sometimes I'm inspired just by a random photograph anywhere, whether it's in a magazine or newspaper or book, whatever, and that will instigate a series of photos and a series of sketches. Then I double prime on my canvases, and then I start sketching with charcoal or whatever I have at hand. There's an urge to paint. It's like craving, right? I have to, right? And so each painting has its own drive, and this one very specifically had a drive for this particular color palette. It was the beginning of spring, and I just started. And this one's looser. I have a lot of the underpainting that's showing, a lot of the charcoal that's showing, but I use a palette knife. I'm trying actually to use a larger palette knife. The palette knife I use is only an inch long, so that it gives me the control that I need, but still allows me to be very loose with the paint. Yeah. But there's tubes and tubes and tubes of paint on each one.
Yeah, so you can see it pops out at you.
And that's one of the blessings of this kind of texture, is that depending on where you have it in the house, it reflects the light differently during the day. So they have different feelings depending on what time of day it is and where it is in the house. So
so it's versatile. And
well, it just has a kind of a changing personality.
Right. So. And like people can look at it in different ways depending on the lighting or.
Yeah, and people will say, well, I have a favorite time of day when I look at your painting, that it brings me, back to a memory that I have of particular, whatever the connotation is that caused them to be attracted to the painting to begin with. So
right.
It's kind of cool.
So a lot of your paintings deal with tracing back to experiences or geographical sites that people find or people get nostalgic about. So what made you choose this memory theme?
It was happenstance. I had done a whole series of paintings that everybody said, well, that reminds me of North Dakota. Well, I've never been to North Dakota, but everybody had these interpretations, and I discovered that I was painting to their emotions. So it was very difficult to say, yes, I'm going to paint deer. You can't do that. But that was the end result. And people were very attracted to them because it reminded of something from their childhood or a trip that they took with their family. And it's this little bit of a glimpse that people have that connects to that emotion and to that memory. So it's a beautiful gift to me.
Yeah.
That people have that kind of experience in my work. So I'm very, very grateful for that. Mm-hmm. But there's a story behind each one, which if someone is interested in the piece, I tell. I don't write it. It's an actual fictional or semi-true story that I tell of each painting.
Right. Do you feel like if you start telling a story about the picture, someone's interpretation will be like someone's personal interpretation will be twisted, or it'll take away from their personal thoughts on it?
Yes, I've sold paintings before where someone heard the story and bought it on the spot because they were so intrigued and they didn't have that interpretation of that particular piece.
Right.
So that story was what attracted them in addition to liking the piece.
Right.
So it's kind of nice to have that layering. Everything's about balance and layering in my work. So, the layers of paint and, if I don't like a spot, I just layer right over it. So it's also about the earth and the layers that happen in nature.
Right.
It's the balance that happens in nature.
So do you find any artists that are able to get those like memories out of you, or make you like trace you back to certain events or feelings like you're able to do with others?
There are a couple of artists that I am fascinated with. I can't really say necessarily that they influence my work, but Paul Ecke is one of them. And he does very abstract work. I've just always loved his depth of color and the interest in it, and they're not landscapes. And then there's a guy in New York, his name's Paul Balmer, and I like his work as well, and that reminds me of my time when I was in school there. So he has a very kind of lyrical way of looking at New York City.
Right.
Which was not my experience of it, but it's kind of nice to have it all tied up in a package, and so I enjoy his work as well. But as far as influences, Giacometti probably is my biggest influence, even though you could never tell. But that brings a very strong connotation of his interpretation of where he gets his sculptural forms from.
Right.
Kind of sad, but it worked. Interesting artist.
And I'm sure nature is a huge inspiration.
That's
for
my
you.
biggest one. From
Yeah.
riding when I was a kid, I was lucky enough to be able to ride through the backwoods of Connecticut and just, you come into an open field like this,
Right.
and you just, wow, there's this beautiful meadow, and it's very inspirational.
Yeah, sure. Well, thank you for being here with us
Thank you.
today.
I'm excited. Very
Yeah,
excited.
we're very excited to see more of your works. And here is actually a set that you brought in today, and there are miniature paintings. So can you explain a little bit about them?
These are part of my miniature series. Sometimes they're studies, but most often they're paintings that need to be done on a smaller scale. So, like this one will translate to a larger piece at some point in time, but at this point in time, it's.
So you said you call them glimpses?
They're called glimpses. Very often, when you are driving on the freeway and you'll look out the window, you get these little minute memories. And it happens to me all the time since I'm such a visual person. But they're just little snapshots. It's just that little moment that
But it stays in your head.
it stays in your head, and it's a feeling.
Yeah.
It's an emotion, it's a memory, and these connect. And they're also great, you put a whole bunch of them together and they remind you of different places or different times of day.
Right.
Again, all based on nature and my awe of, the natural world.
Yeah.
Very
Well,
inspiring.
all of them are absolutely beautiful, and
Thank you
we're
very
so
much.
happy to have them in Lagoga. So you've heard a Laguna Gallery of Contemporary Art interview with Allison Haley Paul, and we're so glad you could join us today. So
Thank you.
stay tuned.